cold seeped into Jamie's bones as he huddled in the damp corner of the cave, the world outside a distant memory. It had been 3 days, maybe 4, since he had wandered too far during the hike with his classmates. The laughter and shouts had faded, swallowed by the yawning darkness of the cave. Jamie's stomach growled, a deep, angry sound that echoed off the walls, but there was nothing to eat. He had scrounged the cavern for scraps, a few wild mushrooms he dared not touch, and some stagnant water that tasted of earth. Each sip only deepened the gnawing hunger in his gut. His thoughts drifted as he stared into the pitch-black tunnel before him, the shadows dancing like ghosts. The flickering light from his dying flashlight created a macabre show, twisting the rock into ghastly shapes. Jamie pressed his back against the cool stone, trying to ignore the way the cave seemed to breathe around him, its walls contracting and expanding, echoing with whispers that felt almost alive. "Help!" he shouted, his voice trembling and small. The sound vanished, swallowed by the void. Panic clawed at him. He was alone, utterly alone, and the reality of his situation began to morph into something more sinister. Time lost meaning, and soon, his own thoughts betrayed him. He could hear laughter echoing from the darkness, his classmates calling him to join them. The memory of their faces swam before him, distorted and blurred, but he grasped at it, longing for the warmth of companionship. "Jamie!" a voice called, soft yet mocking. It echoed around the cave, bouncing off the walls like a taunt. "Why did you leave us?" He shuddered, pressing his hands to his ears. "I didn't. I'm here," he cried, but the laughter only grew, a cacophony of whispers enveloping him. Fatigue weighed heavily on his eyelids. He had to stay awake. If he fell asleep, what might come for him? Shadows bouncing through the caverns like marionette dolls. He could almost see them moving, creeping closer, their intentions dark and unfathomable. Desperate, he gripped a sharp rock he had found, feeling its jagged edge bite into his palm. It was a weapon, he thought, against the unseen terror lurking just beyond the flashlight's feeble glow. But as the shadows danced closer, they began to take shape. Twisted faces, grinning and grotesque, beckoning him into the dark. "Join us, Jamie," they whispered in unison. "We're waiting for you." Tears streamed down his cheeks, mixing with the dirt and despair that had become his reality. He wanted to scream, but no sound came. Instead, he curled tighter into himself, the rock clutched against his chest. The laughter faded into a low murmur, as if the cave itself were mocking him. In a moment of clarity, he remembered his mother's voice, gentle yet firm, cutting through the haze of madness. "Never give up, Jamie. We will find you." It flickered like a candle in the storm of his thoughts. With newfound resolve, he forced himself to stand, shaky legs carrying him toward the mouth of the cave, where a glimmer of light beckoned like a siren. But the shadows twisted and pulled at him, whispering lies that he was too weak, too lost. The light transformed as he stepped closer, an optical illusion from the flashlight. "Help!" he yelled again, and this time the echo was not met with laughter but with silence, a haunting silence that felt like a weight on his chest. As he took a step forward, the shadows lunged, closing in around him. Jamie knew in that moment that the darkness held its own hunger, and he had unwittingly become its prey. As he succumbed to despair, the cave whispered his name, a chilling lullaby that promised he would never escape.
I'm writing this, knowing that they will not believe me. I have told myself that 1,000 times tonight, yet my hand trembles less than I expected. Perhaps I no longer care whether anyone believes me. Does it matter when these are my last hours? The night is late, the whiskey is gone, and the bells, dear God. Those distant bells from the church are ringing again. I can hardly stand the sound. If you are reading this, I am likely already gone. I ask only that you read every word before you call me mad. For my children's sake, don't tell them I was mad. The night he came. I was 9 years old when the man in the red coat came for me. Our house stood at the edge of Miller's Hill. back when snow still blanketed Indiana like it meant something. I remember the fire dying low, my parents asleep, and that particular stillness that only exists on Christmas Eve. We didn't celebrate Christmas the way we do now. There were no gifts or Christmas trees. It was a meal with some of the family we don't see very often to celebrate the birth of Christ. Still, the cold winter night was always quiet and still. Then came the sound of bells, not the bright kind that dance on horses, but a dull metallic clatter, like chains dragged on ice. Maybe my father had gotten up to get wood for the fire. Maybe he was dragging the axe to chop a couple of logs, but the sound was different. I went to see what he was doing. When I got to our living room, I froze. The floorboards creaked. A shape loomed by the hearth, bent beneath the ceiling. He wore red, but not the red of ribbons or berries. His coat was the dark shade of old blood, stiff with age and soot. His beard was not white, but yellowed, matted like a horse's tail. He did not look at me so much as weigh me with his eyes. "You've been naughty," he whispered. The words were rough as coal dust. Naughty ones work for repentance. He was carrying a large burlap sack on his back. I saw the lumps inside move as he studied me. After that, I remember only the smell of smoke, and the world spinning as he lifted me. And the last thing I saw before everything went black was his hand. Thick, scarred, the nails rimmed with soot. The workshop. When I woke, I thought I had died. The room was dimly lit by lanterns that burned low and sickly yellow. The air reeked of oil and rust. There were others there, children, silent and hollow-eyed. We were all shackled to beds. The chains were thick without any chance of breaking. Before light broke, the man with the red coat came in, ringing a loud bell. He unchained me from the bed and connected me to another kid who slept beside me. After we were all chained together, he took us from the room and into another room. The place was vast, stretching farther than sight, filled with tables and tools, half-built toys stacked to the ceiling. The cold brick walls stood like a fortress, holding us in. There was a large stove in the center of the room, but its heat did not reach the brick walls. The sound of hammers and saws never stopped. We called it the North Pole, for nobody would ever find us here or dare to come looking through such a building, though it was no more than an abandoned warehouse in the middle of nowhere. To us, it may as well have been another planet. The man in the red coat ran everything. He kept lists nailed to the wall, good and bad. He'd call our names every evening, mark something beside them, then send us to bed. If you had not done the proper amount of work that day, he would move your name to the bad list. He would make those children clean out the coals from the stove, then take those kids away to be disciplined. The coals were still hot, and the children would go away with him, crying from the burns on their palms. Nobody would ever speak of what happened to them when he would take them away. But we could hear the cracks of whips from our beds. After returning, those kids would always be the hardest workers. Sometimes, when a child would start to get older and become stronger than the rest, they would be put on the bad list and taken away. That would be the last time we would see them. Nobody dared ask where they had gone. We knew. It didn't need to be spoken about. Once we got older and started getting strong, we could stand a chance to take him on. He feared us as much as we feared him. The man would call us his little helpers. He would call us elves sometimes when he would get drunk. He would tell us that we were making toys for good boys and girls. He would sometimes take a load of our toys away. He would never tell us who he was giving them to. He only said they would go to those who deserved them. He would say this with a grin that split his face like a wound. And then he'd laugh, a deep, broken laugh that never reached his eyes. I worked for years, I think. Time blurred there. Seasons meant nothing. There were no windows. The only times he opened the doors, there was snow blowing in. So we thought it was always snowing where we were. We didn't talk much, just the sound of working and his laughter belting through the warehouse. We learned to fear silence more than the sound of work, for silence meant he was watching, judging, making a list. He was drunk most nights, so he would always have to check it twice. He had a way of appearing behind you, without sound, his shadow swallowing your own. You could see the disapproval behind his beard. Every evening, you would wonder if it was going to be your name on the bad list. I only made that mistake once. I won't speak about that night. The escape. I must be careful here. It is not my wish to shock, only to be understood. When I was older, 15, maybe 16, I knew my time was short. He began to look at me the way a farmer looks at a dying horse. Too big to control, too dangerous to keep. The blizzard came one night. You could hear the snow and ice trying to beat through the brick walls. It must have been an extra cold night, because the large stove in the middle of the room could not chase away the chill. On days like this, the man would drink more to help stay warm. With this came my chance. He slipped on the stairs and fell to the ground. Nothing mortal, but enough. Since I was one of the oldest now, all the other kids did as I instructed. I led them over to him. I was able to snatch the keys before he had a chance to get back up. I unlocked myself as quickly as I could and went to unlock the child I was shackled to. But he was too fast and grabbed the child. I ran. I would have to come back later for the others, but I had to get out of there while I had the chance. I barely remember the forest through the ice and snow, the excitement and the fear, the trees black against the snow, the wind like a voice calling my name. I remember falling, crawling, until a train's whistle cut through the night. A farmer found me at dawn, half frozen by the tracks. I told him everything. He smiled sadly and said I'd had a terrible dream. He took me to town and dropped me off at the police station. They thought I was delusional. They said they would find me a good home to stay at with new parents until they could find out where my parents were. 2 nights later, the house in the woods burned to ash. They said lightning must have struck it. I tried to believe them, but deep down, I knew he was covering his tracks. I never saw any of those children ever again. The reinvention. Years passed. I grew into a man, though the child in me never thawed. I painted signs, drew posters, anything to pay rent. People liked my drawings. They said they had character and warmth. All those years making and painting toys. It was the only way I communicated. With a brush. I had hoped that my painted toys would bring joy to some child someday. I painted every one of them, hoping that someday the man would let me keep one. One day, when I was painting in the streets, a man saw my work and offered me a job down south in Atlanta. The feeling I got the first time I walked into Coca-Cola was like a second birth. They got me straight to work. They said that the executives wanted a Christmas campaign. Something bright, they said. Something wholesome. America needs cheer. They asked for a Santa Claus. I gave them one. The images poured out of me like a fever. Red suit, white beard, eyes that twinkled not from joy but from memory. I softened him, of course, rounded his cheeks, made him jolly. I made him everything I had wished that he would be. I gave him elves so no one would think of children. I put him in the North Pole, so far away that no one would search for it. And I told them, good children get presents, bad ones get coal. It sounded innocent enough, but it was a warning, disguised as a myth. My warning. I knew he was still out there. I didn't want a single child to fall on the bad list again. I did what I could to make them believe that they should always be nice and never naughty. The campaign was a triumph. Everywhere I looked, I saw red. They said I'd made Christmas feel modern. I sometimes wonder if that was the moment I damned us all. The haunting. The older I grew, the more he returned. At first, only in dreams. The scrape of boots on floorboards, the smell of soot and pine. Then, in reflections, shop windows and puddles. Every time I looked at a Coca-Cola bottle and saw him staring back at me. Every December, his eyes followed me from billboards, smiling that same hollow smile. I had put a twinkle in his eyes, but my mind would not let me see that. People began to drink more, not just at Christmas, but all year. The company rejoiced. "You've created a season that never ends," they said. Every time I went into a restaurant, I saw the red sign. Every time I went to the store, I saw the bottles. It made the thought of getting food unbearable. I rarely went to a store. I started losing weight. He was all around me. Even though I had gotten away, I could not escape him. The red of his coat multiplied 1,000,000 times, marching through every grocery store and television set. Children sang songs to him. Parents lied for him. And every bottle, every billboard, was another chain, another bell, another hand reaching out from that endless snow. I realized then that he had never died. He didn't need to. He'd become America. The package. Last night, a knock came at my door. No one was there. Only a small brown parcel was left on the step, tied with twine. Inside was a wooden toy. A crude thing, rough edges, splintered paint. One of mine. I knew my work. It was old and worn, but I knew my brushstrokes. Attached was a note. "You've been very good, Thomas. The world believes in me now. Thank you." I heard bells after that. Not outside. Inside. In the walls. The rafters. The sound I've heard all my life, closer than breath. The sound that has brought joy and laughter to so many children and families. Now, like bangs to a soldier, I am taken back to those cold brick walls, painting toys with blistered hands. I know what that means. He's here again. Perhaps he never left. The realization. If anyone finds this letter, remember, I was not trying to create a monster. I was trying to bury one. But the truth is, he won. The man in the red coat took a handful of children. The Santa I created took generations. He doesn't need chains or snow anymore. He has jingles and slogans. He doesn't punish with whips and hot coals, but with cravings that never end. We built his workshop again, and we call it civilization. Sometimes I think of the others, the children who never escaped. I imagine them grown, scattered around the world. Knowing that I made him famous, brought him into every home. But I know that they are not scattered around the world. I know that they are not grown. I'm the only one of them left. I have spent my life pretending to be sane, pretending that the things I saw were just dreams. But tonight, I can no longer pretend. The bells are louder now. He's coming for me. Final words. If you've read this far, do not look for me. Do not look for him. Turn off your lights this Christmas Eve. Do not hang stockings. Do not listen for bells. And if you hear footsteps on the roof, pray they are just your imagination, because he remembers the naughty ones. And I have been very, very bad. Thomas White, December 24th, 1962.
I was never allowed to go into the woods behind our house. My dad always told me that there were caves that I could fall into and nobody would ever find me. I felt like a giant hole in the ground would be pretty easy to see, but I never did go into the woods. I tried once when I was a little girl. I think I was like 8 or 9. My dumbass set off the motion lights before I even got to the tree line. Dad came running out, more mad than I had ever seen him. He took his belt off and beat me all the way back to my room. I was too scared of him to try going back into the woods ever again. I'm 16 now. I mean, if I'm ever going to see what's out there, I might as well do it now. My mom is so scared to try new things. I don't want to get old like her and be too afraid to go out there. I decided I was going to go out there. After everyone was asleep, I snuck out. Last week, Dad was complaining about the light bulb for the motion light going out. I don't think he has fixed it yet. I will test it out before I run out in the middle of the backyard. I wouldn't be out long, just be like an hour or so. I only grabbed a flashlight, a compass, and my phone. If there were caves out there, I wanted to go inside and film them. They are probably small sinkholes, but maybe I can see something cool. If I did fall into a hole, I would have my phone. I could just call someone to get me. I waited until midnight to go out, make sure everyone was asleep. I was able to sneak out of the garage without making a sound. There is a window in the garage that doesn't have a screen. James hit a baseball through the window a few years ago, and they never finished fixing the window. They got as far as replacing the glass, and that was it. I thought to leave the window open in case I needed to get back in fast. My room is close to the garage, so I should be able to get back in before anybody notices that my room was empty. Earlier that day, I put a basketball on the side of the garage by the window. Once I went around the corner to the back of the house, the motion sensor could see me. I grabbed the ball and rolled it into the backyard. If the light was working, then the ball would trip it, and I would have time to crawl back through the window and be back in bed before anybody had a chance to get out of theirs. Nothing. It remained dark. I was good. So I took off towards the woods. I waited until I was far enough into the woods that I couldn't see the lights from my house before I turned on my flashlight. Everything around me was silent except the sound of crickets. I checked my compass. I needed to keep going east. The back of our house faced east, so I thought I would go in a straight line so it would be easy to turn around and come straight back out. Ever since I was a little girl, I have wanted to explore these woods. I wanted to build a fort back here and huge tree houses. I wanted several tree houses that I could swing between with a rope. I asked my dad all the time to build it for me, but he always lectured me about not going into the woods. It was so unfair. I could have had the coolest childhood ever, but I didn't get it because my dad was afraid I would fall into a hole. He is way too overprotective. I wasn't seeing anything out here except trees and rocks. The hills out here felt like mountains as I went up and down them. Even though I had a flashlight, I kept snagging my arms and legs on thorns. I kept thinking, how am I going to hide this in the morning when I have cuts all over me? My parents will know I have been in the woods. I'm going to have to go to school looking like the emo girl with scars all over her arm. What is everyone going to think of me? Screw it. Who cares? I will wear long sleeves for a week or so until they go away. I want to know what's in these woods. I'm not stopping now just because of a few scratches. I had been walking for about 20 minutes when I came to something cool. It was a wad of hair. It looked black and brown. Mostly black, but it was long, 3 or 4 inches long. It had been caught on a broken branch that was sticking out. It was almost as high as my shoulders, so whatever brushed against it was big, like really big. The only thing I could think of was a bear or an elk. Our neighbors saw a black bear in their yard a few years ago, but those things really aren't that big, like they would probably come up to my waist. And they don't have long hair like this. It had to be an elk. There aren't too many around here, I thought, but I think I heard one of my hunting friends from school talking about the conservation trying to populate the area with them. I stuck the glob of hair in my pocket. Maybe my friend could tell me where it was from. I walked for like 10 or 15 minutes, and I saw something weird hanging in a tree. It was metal, hanging from a branch, swaying with the limbs. As I got closer, I could see that it was a large bird cage. It was almost as tall as I was, but the bottom of it was hanging just a little higher than my head. It was black from how long it had been outside, but it still looked shiny when my light was on it. The cage was completely empty. I studied it, trying to figure out why there was a bird cage out here in the middle of nowhere. I grabbed onto it and tried to swing it. It moved, but the metal was so heavy it was hard to push. What type of bird would need such a heavy-duty cage? As I was inspecting it, I noticed the bottom of the cage had a really dark brown, sticky layer on it. It wasn't dried sap from the tree, and I don't think it was bird poop or anything. After picking at it for a while with my fingernail, I realized that it was dried blood. I scanned the woods around me to see if there was anything, just trees as far as my light could reach, then black. Why would anybody leave birds in a cage like this to die? I'm not sure how far back my parents' land goes, but it should be far. I'm probably still on our land. Actually, I'm sure of it. We own about 800 acres. I wonder if my parents know that there is a huge bird cage out here? Maybe I should tell them about it. Well, no. Then they would know I was out here. I'm just going to keep going and see if I find anything else. Deeper into the woods I went. I wasn't as focused as I was on what was right in front of me. I scanned everything around me as I slowly walked farther. I didn't want to miss something else. It would be so easy to walk straight past something that was a couple of feet to my side. As I walked, I couldn't stop thinking about that cage. I turned around to look at it and noticed something else. It wasn't the only one. I had been so focused on going in a straight line that I hadn't noticed that there were a few other cages scattered around hanging from limbs. That doesn't make sense. I looked all around me when I was at the cage and I didn't see these. I went back to the first cage I saw and looked around again. I couldn't see the others. They were hidden behind trees. I went to each cage. I couldn't see the other cages when I went to each of them. Was this on purpose? Maybe whatever birds they were keeping in here were like betta fish and would get pissed off if they saw each other. All of the cages had blood in them. Some had more than others, but I definitely saw blood on all of them. It's kinda weird, but I didn't notice any bones. If they let these birds die in the cages, I figured there would be some bones in or under the cage, but the area was completely clear. Probably some coyotes or something drug off the remains. The bones should be somewhere. It doesn't really matter. I want to see what else is in these woods. Onward, eastward, I went. I felt a lot more excitement now. Before I saw the cages, I felt kinda nervous about falling into a hole, but now that I found something kinda cool, I was ready to explore a lot more. I hadn't gone very far when I found a trail. It wasn't fancy or anything, barely more than a deer trail, but it was definitely something that was taken a lot. I was able to move a lot more freely. Whatever has been using it cleared all the thorns. I don't know if it was some animal eating the brush, or maybe somebody has been out here clearing it out. Either way, I was happy not to have 1,000 thorns in my legs. I was able to move quickly now that I was on the path. I went a long way over the next few minutes. I noticed something up ahead on the trail that looked freaky. It was a ring on the trail, but like huge. It looked like an archway, but a complete circle. It was still a ways away, but I was getting closer. When I got to it, I could see that it was a circle made of trees. The trees were braided into a ring that was large enough for someone to walk under without having to duck through. This is way cooler than a cave. Who made this? How did they do it? It looks like the trees would have broken if they did this. They must have been braiding them as they grew. Who has time for that? And why? Once I stepped through the circle, I couldn't believe what I saw. It was like a church. Pews were made out of logs. They were all set up facing a large pile of ashes. What was this? Did my parents know that a group of people were having church out here on our land? That large of a fire could get out of hand easily. They could have burned down all of our land. It could have gotten to our house. These selfish pricks could have ruined our lives with their creepy little book club. That's all I need for tonight. I found more than I thought I would. I wanted to get back to talk to my parents. I know I will get in trouble, but I need to tell them about these people who are coming out here. I took some pictures of the outdoor chapel and headed back down the trail. I looked at my compass and noticed that I hadn't been going east. I had been going northeast. I should have paid attention to that and marked where I got on the trail. I had no clue where I should have gotten off the trail. I would have to guess. Nothing looked familiar as I went back. Just a bunch of dark trees and brush. Why didn't I think about going back? If I head west, I might not hit our house perfectly, but I should at least get to the road that our house is on, then I can go down the road to our house. I walked a couple of minutes and left the trail going west. I knew I wasn't on the same path that I had taken in because I never saw cages. This made me slightly nervous because I knew that people come out here and they had cages and were making weird things with the trees. What if those cages weren't for birds? I needed to get back home as fast as possible. I started running. I couldn't go too fast because I was still trying to see where I was going. Tripping on a rock, breaking my leg, could be a death sentence, being this far into the woods without anybody knowing where I was. I was wrong about calling my parents. I could, but they wouldn't know where I was. Suddenly, the ground gave out, and I was falling. Shit. No! I landed at the bottom of the hole. I wasn't hurt. I fell onto a bunch of branches that must have fallen into the hole. As I lay on the ground, I tried to collect myself. This must be one of the caves. I didn't see it at all. I pointed my flashlight up and saw I fell through the brush. It was a trap. There were limbs put over the hole. I looked around the hole. I couldn't see much. I looked down at the branches that I had fallen on. They weren't branches. They were bones. I jumped up and tried to find a spot without bones. The floor was completely covered in them. I screamed out for help, but there was no way anybody could hear me. I silenced myself quickly, though. There was nobody around to hear me. If there were, it would be the people who made the trap. I pulled myself for a second. I scanned over the bones. None of them were human. They were smaller animals. It looked like dog bones, probably coyotes or foxes. There were a few larger skeletons as well. Maybe those were deer. At least it wasn't a trap for people. How the hell do I get out of this hole? I looked around to see if there was a way out. The hole was about 10 feet deep and 10 feet across. I tried to climb out, but getting a grip was impossible on the smooth rock. I couldn't find any dirt that I could dig out to make a way out. Something stopped me from finding a way out. Something was moving outside the hole. I was frozen as I listened. Something was walking around the hole. I turned off my flashlight and waited for it to pass. A sound pierced through me. It was like nothing I had ever heard, but I knew it came from whatever was walking around up there. I turned on my flashlight and pointed it where the sound came from. Large red eyes looked down at me. I could only see its head, but I knew it was the largest animal I had ever seen out here. It had long, black, shaggy hair and horns that curled back. I couldn't move. My mind was blank. Its gaze stole every bit of survival instinct out of me. I just waited for it to end me. With one swift movement, it jumped down into the hole and grabbed me with its mouth. With a powerful leap, I was flying through the air in its mouth. Its jaws were clamped around my waist. Once we landed on the ground, it put me down on the grass. It stepped back and studied me. Should I play dead? Fight it? Or run? My mind went into hyperspeed, and I jumped up and ran as fast as I could. I didn't look behind me. I just ran as fast as I could. At first, I didn't hear anything behind me, just the brush and limbs as I ran through them. I ran for a few minutes before I dared look behind me. I saw it. Like a werewolf jumping through the shadows, completely silent. I couldn't help myself. I had no control over my voice. I just started screaming. I saw light. It was our house. I screamed out for help. The sound behind me gets louder. I tried to look and see where it was, but it moved without being seen. I ran as fast as I could. I kept my eyes on the light as the glow got larger. I should be there soon. I kept screaming for help as I ran. I saw another light come on in the house. They heard me. I kept screaming for help. I turned around again and set it. It was jumping from tree to tree. It stayed invisible for the most part, but I could still see the shadow darting towards me. It was getting closer. I was close enough that I could see the outline of the house. The clearing from the yard was just ahead of me. Suddenly, the yard was lit up with the brightest light I had ever seen. It blinded me, but I kept running. As I reached the yard, I saw a silhouette running towards me. "Dad, help me!" He reached me and kept running past me. "Get in the house now!" He yelled at me as he passed. I did as he said. As I closed the door behind me, I turned to see my mom. She didn't say anything, but she had the saddest face I have ever seen. I went to the window and watched the backyard, waiting for my dad to come back out. I tried to calm my breathing so I could hear the creature, but I heard nothing. My mom was behind me, watching out the window too. "What was that thing? Did you know about it?" She didn't respond. She just stood motionless behind me, staring out into the dark woods. Oh, thank God. He emerges after a few minutes. He marched straight inside and to his room. As he passed by us, he only said one thing without looking at us. "We will never talk about this night